Here are some fit and finishing tips for assembling this case feeder in 6.5 Creedmoor. Some things are still just better done by hand than trying to print them. So on the bottom of the case ram here, you have what used to be pointy corners like you did in the top. Just take a file and put a small chamfer on those, about 35-40 degrees. This is going to aid the process when the ram is coming and hits these guides. It's going to help it push up and over. It's just a little, don't have to take a whole lot off, just enough to break the edge to help it guide. And again, you'll see it if it's hanging up as you're testing it, and take it out, take a little more off. This part here, which attaches to your primer catcher, you're going to want to pay attention to this flat part here. Yeah, you're printing with supports, and unfortunately the bridging overhang areas never are perfect flats or perfect any shape. So you may need to smooth that out, flatten it off. I took just a smidgen out just to flatten that down. Your case feeder, this, print it in PLA Plus. I've done both. This is PLA Plus here. I highly do not recommend that you print this in PETG or ABS. The supports inside of this are insubstantial. The entire cavity supports. I know if I print out in PETG, if I ever got those supports out, which I don't think I probably would even get them out, it would leave pieces of it all over the place, creating a mess. This needs to be a nice smooth surface on the inside. So use PLA, do yourself a favor. On the bottom here, where these two pieces will match, this part here, which I was saying sand, sits here. Check for any interference. As you can see, I have a nice clean fit here, nice and flat in the bottom. You know, I did touch this with the file, this area right through here, just to ensure getting those raised edges up so it's nice and flush. Not a lot of hand finishing that needs to be done. The next part is the case rim guides right here. And this one's going to take a little more work. Once you get the supports out of here, and I actually used a small ruler to push those out. I mean, if you have a file small enough to fit in that hole, great. It's about 40 thousandths. But I actually found a small ruler. Can push the support material right out. This was very effective for getting that cleaned up. But again, printing with overhangs, and you're probably not going to be able to see this in this video. We have a very clean looking hole here. But on this side here, when you look inside in the middle, I think you probably know where you can actually see it. There's a arc droop from the bridging with the supports. There's no way to deal with that with printing. You want this hole to be snug because you want the friction to hold your case guides in place. So it's going to take a little work. I've got this cheap file set from Harbor Freight, or I don't know, I think it's Harbor Freight. You know, comes with a bunch of thin little files. It's actually wicked handy for a lot of things. And they're very fine files. So I have a flat pointy one. So what I do is get in there with the tip and try and scrape away that overhang. Takes a little time. Gotta work it for a little bit, but you'll get it. So you can clean up both holes. Once you do, and I haven't cleaned these up yet, you'll be able to fit your guide in here. And this one, it begins to start and actually goes pretty good. Actually, this one here, I haven't touched it all with the file, and it's already working its way in. So I may not even need to do much except just work this a few times. And if you can't get this to go at all, you can go straight on so you can kind of test the edges to see where your issue is. If it's here, use a corner. Don't try and go full straight in if you can't get it in initially. Now once those are in there, if they're snug like they should be, you know, they shouldn't really move around much, and if you do, you can readjust them by hand. But if you do need to pull them out, highly recommend some, you know, flat jar pliers. I mean, you can use any pair of pliers. You'll tear up the edge of them. It takes less than 3 minutes to print these, so who really cares? So I'm gonna move over to the press and show you some more parts that need to be fitted. There's one less area on the case feeder that needs to get cleaned up. Inside the radius of that center hole, you can see it better from here. This edge here, because of the supports, the very bottom of the radius of that hole usually needs to be cleaned up. You'll find that you go put the case in and it won't, and then you can jam it through and then it cleans up, and then you can jam it back and forth a couple times, and then you can even see a little bit of material hanging right there. I'm just leaving that for now. I could remove it, but if it's not in the way, it's fine. I just hit the edges with a little file, scraped it a little bit. At that point, you know, should be able to nicely put your case in there, have it drop right through. I have the case rim guides installed at this point, and as you can see, creates a little ridge there, just like on the Dillon 650, to catch your case. These need to stick out roughly about 50 thousandths, but honestly, the easiest thing is to just adjust them. They're easily adjusted on the press too, but it's just easier to show you from this angle what they're doing. This is going to help with the issue of when the case above drops down from hitting the case down here and knocking it over. So about 50 thousandths, get them adjusted. Obviously, if it won't move, then you need to pull them back out. And if, you know, as long as it's catching, it really doesn't matter how much it catches. This side of the case rim guide here is going to need to get trimmed. You can cut however you want. Dremel, grab a pair of scissors. It's not very thick. It's only 40 thousandths. So this will need to get cut. Not much. Needs a little clearance because it will hit the case ram guide when installed. So it's simple enough. Just get it installed, see it, mark it, cut it, put the little piece back in, and you'll see that in the press that I fit this after I've installed it. You could just cut it now, take that whole corner off, but the bigger this piece is, the easier it is to work with. So really up to you. Here's one less area I forgot to cover. There's a slight lip. It was a nice angle in the Fusion file, but due to the restrictions of layer printing, it jumps a layer, which is the thickness of my layer. Highly recommend that you smooth that out with a file to make that a continuous height transition. And then you can see this is white. Highly recommend you just smooth the top of this off to get rid of those layer lines. So the smoother the better. The cases want to come up here and ride, so that you'll have a smoother action the smoother your case is, because the entire bottom of the case rim is sitting on top of this as the ram goes back and forth. So any little thing you can do to smooth out the operation of the case feeder. Now on the case feeder guide, or specifically the ram guide, you are going to need to print this with some supports. You'll definitely need supports under this bridge here, and you'll need supports possibly in the hole at the top where you're going to feed the nut in. But here, even if this is made out of PETG, which I highly recommend for a couple pieces that you want to do in PETG. You're going to want to do the bridge, the ram guide, and the base support, and I'll show you in a minute. After you remove your supports, you're going to want to make sure this area is smooth here. I'll zoom in. And this is where the little roller on your ram goes across, on top and bottom. I raised the center portion of this because with printing with supports and the bridging, some of this hang down. You may end up having to file some of this, but since I brought it up 50 thousandths, I haven't needed to touch that. But definitely, the smoother this is, this area here, the better. I mean, the rest of it's, you're not having support, so it should be nice and smooth. But you're gonna need to put a little tension there. We've got the roller that goes in the ram, and I don't know if you can see this because of the focus, because it's such a small piece. I have sanded around the outside of this also with a file. You just want to take off the high spots. Again, the smoother this is, the smoother your interaction is together on this, and it's just going to help aid you out with your action of your case feeder. All right, better free cam it now. Now, in addition, here's the bridge. Printed that in PETG. I do recommend for the hole here that you put the support just to make sure you can get the nut that goes in there and gets pulled inside. The little wheel that your primer guide arm goes through, and then the base. And you can, I highly recommend PETG. It's strong, it has some flex, it is not going to break. So it gives it a nice, flexibility of the metal with the rigidity and strength. PLA doesn't really have much flex and will crack sooner. It probably could work, but this actually works very well. So next, I'll get this on the machine and show you how to set it up.